You've heard of the wealth of nations, yeah? Well, we're gonna talk about the worth of nations. So the last two videos have looked at how we live in a world obsessed with ratings. In the first vid, we looked at how, at the individual level, we're all essentially portfolio managers, managing diversified social assets in the form of social media followers, likes, engagement, etc., credit scores, social credit ratings, etc. And in the last vid, we looked at how corporations under neoliberalism aren't fundamentally concerned with profits anymore, but with maintaining their rating, primarily in the form of maintaining and increasing market cap, stock valuation, and keeping up the ability to perpetually acquire cheap credit. In this vid, we ask, okay, so if people and corporations are concerned primarily with ratings, what about countries? What about the nation state? That is, under late neoliberalism, the nation state is primarily a ratings-driven entity. In what way, you ask? Well, come with me on a 4-minute journey and we'll explain. So Michelle Fair argues that under late neoliberalism, nation states can be classed under 4 different phases. The first is from 1979 to 1992. The second is from 1992 to 2001. Third is 01 to the Great Financial Crisis in 08. And then the final being from 08 until now. So from 79 to 92, we had Thatcherism and Reaganism that undertook what's called the conservative revolution, but it wasn't primarily concerned about getting jobs for people. It was more about taxpayers being able to enjoy the fruits of their labor that apparently big bad government had taken from them. And they revived an entrepreneurial spirit against special interest groups. That is, civil servants, the lazy and thieving unemployed, and of course unions who are viewed as negatively affecting wage prices. Now in 92, we see a shift towards what Fair calls a more therapeutic and even motivational maneuver. As debts increased and bond markets started to get spooked, center-left parties, maybe Blair, Clinton, and Schroeder, started selling the idea that they were going to help people by weaning them off of their dependence on government programs.
The law now says that those who can work have to work. And now that we as a nation have put that requirement on them, we have to make sure that those who have to work can work. They will be better, but so will we.
Now notice how this is sold as a type of governmental self-help. It's not as punitive as it was in the previous era, because this was for your own good, to achieve happiness or to become empowered, so that you could find your own well-being and bring back that will to win. Notice how this also fits perfectly with trends in pop psychology that were gaining prominence at the time. In this age, people were viewed purely in terms of being employable, which is what gave them dignity as citizens. And at the same time, the floodgates of cheap commercial credit were just opened.
What we're doing is modernizing the financial services industry, tearing down these antiquated walls and granting banks significant new authority. I think you should all be exceedingly proud of yourselves.
So the government needed to underwrite and insure this credit so that they could maintain that the citizenry were solvent. So government made new investments in education, providing young people with skills that would make them attractive to lenders and potential employers. Also invested in job training. People had to be trained and retrained to maintain perpetual employability. And it even affected civil servant metrics. We see this with the rise of performance-based targets. Then comes 9/11 and a whole new enemy was identified, maybe created, which directed energy outside and demanded new forms of protection and security. Enter increased surveillance practices as well as the tightening of border policies, as well as increased credit reliance to cover over the inflated war budgets, and of course the refusal to fund social programs. Then enter the GFC, 2008. Since 2008, nations have had to further appease bond markets because our credit reliance has only intensified. But how do you do this? How does a nation reassure financial investors that their bonds are reliable, stable, and in the long term viable? Well, Fair argues it's through the creation and maintenance of credit-worthy citizens. And of course corporations too. Now there are 2 ways to do this. The first is by investing in education, skills, infrastructure, etc., 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 etc. And the second is by investing in those people and institutions that are already deemed to be creditworthy and who have therefore speculative future value as creditworthy entities. Well, what about the rest? They're disposed. Fair calls this disposing the discredited. Discourage people from registering for social programs. Deport and don't let the discredited in the first place. Or swaps, like what they did in Ireland, where they basically sent young people elsewhere in the world to work, while simultaneously then being able to bring in companies like Facebook and LinkedIn. All you gotta do is just offer them very low corporate tax rates, right? Or zero capital tax. And this makes the country seem more appealing to potential investors because they can boast about low unemployment levels. And of course, they can boast about the creditworthy employables that are in their borders still. Now, of course, this found its zenith in the Trump and Brexit elections, where the new populists' mantra is summed up in this pithy statement by Steve Bannon. Companies are concerned with shareholder value, but Trump is concerned with citizenship value. That is, with the value of being American. And then, of course, the promise was that income and power would follow, so long as we valorize our national assets in the form of race and nationality, traditional values, gender norms, etc., etc., etc. Of course, if this value is all part of the ratings matrix, then what does being American really even mean, right? This is something for us to ponder. So what do you think about all of this? Comment down below and let's have a little chat about citizenship value in a global economy that is obsessed with ratings. And let's ask if there are strategies whereby we can work within this ratings system towards liberatory ends, towards ends of equality and justice and beauty, etc. Or is this rating system just the tolls of doomsday ringing? I sure as shit hope not, by the way. And of course, as always, resources down below so you can do some further reading and thinking on your own time. Please definitely do that thinking. And yes, like, subscribe, share, get people involved, all of that shit. Love, 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 love. Peace.